Alright, so before we begin today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the warm-up again. The warm-up is talking about translations, being translated. If you remember, translating means sliding, so we're sliding the figure. And basically you're just adding in or subtracting from each coordinate in the direction that it's moving. Remember that your x value moves left and right, with the left being negative and y being positive. And your y value is your movement up or down, with up being positive, down being negative. Very similar to the work we were doing with our slope. So go ahead, try these two problems, and then we'll come back together and go over the answers. So now that you've had a chance to try them, I'm going to start with the first one, and we're looking at p prime. Remember that p prime is your new figure. So we started at -3, 2. We are translating it 3 units right. So that means my x-coordinate is going to have a positive 3 added to it because I'm going to the right. And my y-coordinate of 2 is going to go down 2, so I'm going to subtract 2 from it. So -3 plus 3 is going to give me a new x-coordinate of 0, and positive 2 plus -2 will also give me a new y-coordinate of 0. So p prime is actually now going to be at 0, 0. In problem 2, we have a prime. So we're starting at -3, 2 for a. This time we're going 4 units right, so -3 plus 4. We're going 2 units down, so 2 minus 2. That gives me a new point of 1, 0. We have b prime, which is at 2, 2. We are still going right 4, and we're still going down 2. So that's going to give me the point 6, 0. For c prime, we have 2, -3. Still going right 4 and going down 2. And that's going to give us 6 and a -5. D prime I'm going to do over here. So D to start with is -3, -3. We're still going 4 to the right and 2 down. So -3 plus 4 and -3 minus 2. It's going to give me a D prime point of 1, -5. So today we're looking at rotations. And rotation is when we take the figure and we spin it. And there's going to be 3 rotations that we actually look at. Going over the rotation, the vocabulary. Rotation, where we take a figure and we spin it around a center point. And that center point that we're spinning the figure around is known as center of rotation. In our case today, our center of rotation is always going to be the origin. We're always going to be centered and spinning around the point 0, 0. So there's 3 rotations that we're going to be looking at. And each one has its own formula. And these you're going to have to remember. And we'll try to come up with some good ways to be able to remember the formulas for the different ones. But for a 90-degree rotation clockwise, so if you look at a clock, the hands typically move to the right. So that's our clockwise direction. So 90 degrees clockwise. And we're going to be using the formula y, -x. So basically what you'll see happens is we flip the 2 and the x becomes the opposite sign. Next we have a 180-degree rotation. This is where we take the figure and we actually pretty much just flip it, rotate it so that it's straight up and down from the original figure. 180 degrees is a straight line. And what you'll see here is basically we don't flip anything, but we take both the x and the y value and we change their sign. And that should make sense. If we're rotating it 100 degrees, it should go from positive coordinates, for example. 180 degrees will take it down into the negatives. And here we have a 270 degrees rotation clockwise. And this would actually take us, if you're thinking about a clock, with our figure starting at 12, a 270 would take us 3/4 of the way around the clock, or over to 9 o'clock on the clock itself. And you'll notice again that my x and y flip, but this time the y is negative. So with your 90 degree clockwise, you flip and the x is negative. With your 270 degrees clockwise, you flip but the y is negative. So now looking at a few examples. So we're looking at about 180 degree rotation. Remember that 180 degree rotation is negative x, negative y. So we're going to start with D, and we're going to get D prime. So D is negative 4, 4. Our formula says negative x, negative y. I'm not going to write the formula each time, but you do want to write it on your paper, right with the problem, so you remember what you're doing. So I'm going to change the sign of x, so it's going to go from negative 4 to positive 4. And I'm going to change the sign of y, and that's going to take it from positive 4 to negative 4. E is going to become E prime, so negative 1, 2. Change the sign of the x, change the sign of the y, so positive 1, negative 2. And F is at negative 3, 1, so we're looking for F prime. Change my signs, positive 3, negative 1. Now we're looking at a 270. Remember that 270 has our x's and y's flip, and the y changes signs. So A is going to become A prime. So negative 4, 1. Flip your x and your y first. So 1, negative 4. Now my y value changes signs. The original y value changes signs. So that positive 1 becomes a negative 1. B prime. So we start at negative 1, 4. Flip gives me 4, negative 1. And the y value changes signs, making it negative 4, negative 1. For C prime, we started with negative 2, 1. We're going to flip, so 1, negative 2. And again, we change the sign of the y value. Notice here it says 270, but it says counterclockwise. So now if you think of a clock, and we always start up at 12, and we said that 90s over at 3 o'clock, 180s down at 6, and we have 270 over at the 9 o'clock. And this is when we move clockwise, moving towards the right. Well, now we're moving counterclockwise. We're moving the opposite direction. So counterclockwise, 90 goes first, 180 still 180, but the 90 becomes my 270. So 270 counterclockwise is actually 90 clockwise. And 90 clockwise, if you remember, we switch the x and the y, and we change the sign of the x. Once you've figured out the formula, it's not too bad going from there, but it's picking that right formula. So x is negative 1, 1. So we're looking for x prime. So I'm going to flip the order. So 1, negative 1. My x value, which is negative 1, is going to change signs and become positive. We then have y, which is negative 3, 1, and y prime. So we're going to flip the 1 and the negative 3. Because the negative 3 is my x value, it's going to become positive because I need to change the sign. z, negative 1, 4. So z prime, we're going to get 4, negative 1. That negative 1 will become positive 1 when we change the sign. 90 degrees counterclockwise. Remember, if we're going 90 degrees counterclockwise, we're looking at 270 degrees clockwise. So we're going to use the 270 degrees formula. And we flip the x and the y, and we change the sign of the y. So k started at 1, negative 2. And that's going to switch and become positive 2, 1, because my y value changes signs. L prime started at 2, negative 4. It's going to flip and become 4, 2. M prime started at 5, negative 4. It's going to become 4, 5. Got a little bit of room left. N prime started at 4, negative 2. When it flips, it's going to become positive 2, 4. Here's 2 for you to try on your own. Make sure you're watching the rotation and make sure you're watching which direction that rotation is actually spinning. So for the first one, we're going 270 degrees counterclockwise, which is actually 90 clockwise. So my formula is y comma negative x. So m prime is going to go from 2, 5, and it's going to switch to 5, negative 2. N prime started at 6, 4. It's going to switch and become 4, negative 6. P prime was at 6, 1. It's going to switch and become 1, negative 6. And Q prime was 2, 1. It's going to switch and become 1, negative 2. For the second one, we were going 180 degree rotation. Doesn't matter if we go clockwise or counterclockwise on 180 degree rotation. We end up with the same spot either time. And our formula for 180 degree rotation is negative x, negative y. So we're starting with s, and we're going to s prime. So negative 3, negative 5. The two signs are going to change, and we're going to end up at 3, 5. T prime, negative 1, negative 1, is going to become positive 1, positive 1. And u prime, which was at negative 3, negative 3, is going to become positive 3, positive 3. Your homework tonight should be a worksheet. You should be able to find it online if you don't have it in front of you. If you don't have access to a printer or choose not to print it, that's fine. You most certainly can write your answers on another sheet of paper. If you have any questions, please let me know.